Hello and welcome to Low-Code Campfire, episode number 242 for May 8th, 2026. I am Dale Warner, head of support for Plant App, and I'll be your host today. Our Low-Code Campfire is something that we do every Friday, or most Fridays, 10 a.m. Central Time, where we get together and talk about Plant App, the challenges and experiences, and just share and help one another. This is all skill levels welcome. We record them, put them on YouTube at youtube.com/plantanap. So that's a great place to get, well, now 241 hours of great training content. Learn from your compatriots. We run this agenda week by week. We always stop and say hello in our introduction segment because we're a friendly group. And then we go around the campfire. We do anything first call, anything that was submitted in advance. And we have a couple of those today. And then we'll go around and take a look at some of the other areas of our activity, the Campfire website, the community. But after an hour or so, we go into our Afterglow segment, and that's where we turn off the recording, hang out for a few more minutes, and just enjoy each other on a little bit more of a personal level. So we do hope you'll engage with us. If you're watching in replay, we would hope that you would join us live sometime. You can submit questions and topics in advance. That can be done sending to support@plantanap.com, and we'll take a look at those. I might be able to do a little bit of research before we get them on the schedule, but we'll add them to the list and talk about them on Friday. So take advantage of that. And with that, I will say hello, one and all, one and two.
Hi,
Good morning.
happy Friday.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a short week for me. I skipped out on Monday, but still 4 days is enough, I find. So happy Friday. Did anyone come with a first call?
I did not.
No, and yeah,
All right, so here we go. We'll jump into the things that were asked in advance. And I might save this one for just a minute, just in case Mark comes back. But there was a question about uh, when a form produces an error, it just says contact the administrator, and trying to think about how Mark was looking for a more direct path to the administrator when that error comes up. And so maybe we'll save that for a minute, but I'll think if anybody has any suggestions on that. There was another one that came in on support this week, and I don't have a good suggestion for the client. So I thought I'd throw it out here to see if anybody had done this, where with a listings and Bootstrap 5, being able to pre-select the items or some items from the list. Currently, that's not a core feature of listings, and I think we may have published some JavaScript, a hack to be able to do that in Bootstrap 3, but I don't think that exists for Bootstrap 5 yet. Just wondering if anybody has done that.
I haven't.
I did the Bootstrap 3 hack, but I did not have to implement that in 5. Would the 3 act as a basis, or is there such difference that it's starting over?
I really don't know. I would think it would be able to act as a basis. I just haven't had any cycles to be able to invest in that. In Bootstrap 3, the behavior was a little bit different. I think selected items just showed up as the whole row just highlighted versus having a checkbox. Am I remembering that right?
That sounds very familiar, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it would take me a while to go find it, so not something I can give to you today.
Yeah. But typically a checkbox, I think that could be checked very easily with JavaScript. So if it's there, I wouldn't think it's too different. The idea, I think on the script that I saw before was that it's looking for some characteristic on the row and then using that to find the closest TD, and it's doing a selection. So it'd be different JavaScript, but possible. Again, and maybe it would be if nobody has that, that's fine. I'm not asking you to do any work, but uh, maybe you can help me brainstorm what that feature might look like in uh, if we were to build it into the core somehow into core Plantain app. What would it look like? So,
Well, and in mine, I don't remember doing it in JavaScript. I remember building the feature. And I don't remember doing it in JavaScript. And my first thought on how I would have approached it was using a computed field in a list or something and calculating a value out of a out of a select query, out of a SQL query.
let's see if I have one of these, or maybe we'll just make an example. Yeah, it's probably easier to make an example.
Good morning, Ben.
Right, our odds of
Um,
having an answer to this question just went up. We're working on the question of on a listing, how do we automatically check the checkboxes of things that are selected? So to enable selection, let's see, I believe that is in here someplace. Oh, it's going to be a
It's in the
button.
button. You have to have a button first that forces it to say that you have to have a selection.
Enable selection. And then we have some actions, but I don't care at this point. I just want to have the feature. So we have a button and we now get checkboxes. So what we don't have is any way low code to say this item should come in pre-selected. If we did, where might that exist in the low code? Do we define a Well, it's interesting that we're activating this in the button, so it's a characteristic. The checkbox only shows up when you have a button, but you could have multiple buttons. Um, so, for example, first thought is here with enable selection, you could have a is selected field that points to true or false. Excuse me, would expect a value of true or false, and you would select the field that determines whether or not it'd be selected. But that could be weirdly in conflict if you had two buttons that did selection. But from a from a simplest standpoint, it could be if we ideally this enable selection maybe this becomes participates in selection, but you have another thing enable selection elsewhere that like in settings that turns it on just starts to get messy. Messy meaning more work if we can define as minimum possible to get it done, that kind of increases the likelihood of it getting done. But any ideas?
Part of me is thinking, because like you said, putting it under here, if you had multiple buttons with enable selection, you could potentially have more than one button conflicting with how it would determine selection. So to minimize that, I first thought in my head is data source, and that's where it should live, with an option saying, if enable selection is active, this is the field that would determine whether the record is selected or not, or something to that effect. But that way you only have it in one location. And it kind of, to me, makes sense because it's kind of similar to the drop-down list where you give it its data source and then right underneath it, it's the initial value type of idea. So here you would be setting your data source and right underneath it saying, this is how we determine which items are pre-selected if the selection is available. Yeah, like, and that would be a good idea too, is like saying the data source itself would have a field, and then like ID column, you would just put in one simple field name, and that should be a true false, potentially.
So when I set it up this way, the idea is that if we make a unique enough name, row is pre-selected, for example, or even PAA row is pre-selected, um, that could be made to be present in any data source. Meaning, if we change the parameters here on the data source, then every different type of data source would need to be adjusted to accommodate that. So that becomes a big project in itself. But if we, and I mean, as compared to, this is kind of a magic column solution. If you use this magic name, then you get the result. We could just see if that magic column is present and do pre-selection. That way it could be in any data source.
I'm kind of two minds of that. I mean, I see where you're coming from with regards to a lesser lift, so to speak, because it wouldn't affect other things, but then becomes the issue of this has to be very clearly documented that this is the option. And the problem with that is that, and like I've experienced in many cases, you can give all the information to a person up front but you cannot force them to read. And I just can see a lot of people are going to ignore, even if you have it documented, use the following field to pre-select. They are not going to read that. They're not going to put it in there, and it's not, they're not going to utilize
yeah.
it.
Much like, let's see if we can, much like this one, I think. Special lists and tokens are available. Learn more. So you got to go somewhere. Even I mean, it becomes voluminous. This is one of the areas where we have magic uh, things available. So the special listen tokens, the action grid entry selected, um, is the opposite side of this when it's processing only on. So to your point, I mean, it is here, but you got to be looking for it. And if we did it that way, it would be you'd have to be looking for it.
I mean, even if it was added, let's just say for argument's sake, in the data source, like right underneath where it says the unique row, that ID column, let's just say. Like right now, if you don't supply an ID column, I believe you get an error message
Yep.
because it's a required field. But let's just say for argument's sake, you come in here, if you have a button saved in the grid that uses a selection, then show default, selection or whatever field or a field that indicates selected, whatever. And then a space just like ID column where it gives it the possibility of giving a value. However, if no value is given, don't force it and say it's
Mhm.
required, but say if
Right.
no value is given, then the default value is false. So if you leave it blank, then it's just assumed nothing is pre-selected. If you put a value in there, then at the time that it renders, it checks that field value for a true value. And if it's there, then pre-select it.
Yeah. I think we would have to ask for it all the time. I don't think it could be dependent on whether or not there's a button because this all happens in advance, but we could have it
Well,
be
then,
here in advance and not
yeah, and then underneath where it says the ID column provides a mechanism, you could put the description saying, this value is used only if there is a button on the grid that has selection enabled. I mean, then at least it'll be clear enough, hopefully, for people to understand that you have to have a button with the selection first before this can work.
something along those lines. So that would be one way. Again, I think all these are being driven by configuration files, and it would end up being a change. And I don't know to a lot of them. I don't know how many. Anyway, I'll throw that out as a possibility. Um, another thing that we could do would be to just put it in the one button and force it to be the same across all buttons that use selection. Right? If you change it in one, it would just you could only specify one essentially. Right? So
My only concern with that is that if someone doesn't realize what they're doing, it's maybe one of those situations where they change it thinking it's changing in one spot, and then they wipe out whatever logic was previously there.
well, there won't be any logic. It'll just be which I mean, but you're right about it would, they may not recognize the impact. We could, um, in the inline help, we could say it's only one only one column can be used for pre-selection. But yeah, it's not easy. I think just like we're doing Forms 2.0, I think at some point we'll redo listings, and this would be a great kind of thing to include in that. So that's far more natural anyway. And just asking directly, Ben, you don't have a JavaScript solution for checking these.
No, I do not.
Yep. Probably wouldn't be that hard, but it's the the client in question, I mean, they had it and used it for Bootstrap 3. They upgraded and now they don't have it in Bootstrap 5 and are missing it. And it's just the same kind of thing that I warn about regularly with JavaScript solutions, that things change between versions, or between in this case Bootstrap 3, Bootstrap 5, and then you've got to rethink them. It's part of the low-code engineer effort. One of the low-code workarounds that I pitched is to use a pair of listings where the selected items are on the left and the full item list is on the left and the selected items are on the right grid. And so you can move things from one side to the other. I've seen this construct used on other websites. So you kind of work to figure out what gets included and what doesn't. And then your final processing is on the right grid where everything in the grid is processed. It works. It takes some extra effort. Has anybody done anything like that, or did I even make any sense when I was saying that?
No, it made sense. I haven't done that. I did find my solution, which in the Bootstrap 3, but it was a along Ben's approach of modifying the data source. So I didn't use the built-in selected checkbox. I just added a checkbox to the data source.
Oh. So then you're putting the grid into edit mode or something along that way.
It is a grid that I have in edit mode. Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Is it maybe I missed the use case of this, but is it to show something like, let's say a list of settings or options for somebody and they're toggling them on and off? Is that the use case?
I don't know the exact use case. He has a cookie that has a comma delimited list of, I think, IDs that need to be on.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't think that that's the use case, only because this list here is saying this is what you have actively selected in the grid. Whereas like an enable type thing like you're talking about, Patrick, that's a field that exists in
Well,
the
the
data
reason I was
source.
asking the question is because what's the use case though for having something already selected when the grid loads? And to me that, having options or something like that would be a use case, and in which case, I would think I would go with conditioned buttons. I know that's not but I mean that's what I would do if that were, if what I wanted was something to preload showing that I have previous selections. I would go with toggled buttons with conditions on them that say, the ones where you've made the selection has the active looking button, and the ones that where you haven't made the selection has the disabled looking buttons.
I kind of like that.
And I think it would accomplish the same thing, but I don't know the exact use case.
So without knowing for certain, I think the use case is along the lines of um, the logic thinks that the logic of the system or the business logic says I want to run this process uh, uh, on some things and I'm going to give the user some discretion. So the whether it's areas or I mean locations, inventory items, whatever. I just need them. I think all these inventory items need to be included in the invoice. So
Mhm.
you come up with those pre-selected. You could add more, or take some away, and then hit save. Well, your solution is a great one. If you are essentially working with some form of well, with a table that you could have a column dedicated to that, then clicking buttons would, um, if something can be enabled or disabled for that purpose, and as you click them, it changes the underlying data. So at the end, when you click a button to say do the process, instead of working on your the Plant and App provided selected functionality, it would be working on all the ones that ended up with that selected field
Yeah, that's
activity.
kind of what I was saying. Yeah.
It so it's a different it would be a change in um, I mean the UI would change a little bit, although you could style your buttons as checkboxes, and so that still might work. Um, but uh, from a low-code engineer standpoint, you'd have to redesign your grid to work differently. You're not taking advantage of you had it one way and now you've got to rethink it and do it another way. It's completely doable, but it's from the low-code engineer standpoint of, hey, I had this working, I have to go to Bootstrap 5, now I got to rethink this whole thing. It's frustrating. But I think there are good solutions that could be used. I like that far better than my left-right grid thing, by the way. And hello, Matt. Welcome.
Good morning.
Since we were talking about that one, I think there's an example of those buttons on the Campfire website. Let's see if we have it. Let's see if this is it. No, this was something else. Nope. So I don't think I wish I could have just I know I've got it somewhere, that technique, and that would be a useful one to have out there just to kind of document it. We've shown it off before in Low-Code Campfire, but pretty easy to do, and yeah, cool. Well, thanks for helping me explore that topic. So maybe we can take up Mark's question even just to help him out, even if he's not going to be here today. So this is on action form. You have some kind of action that something is broken, and we generate a contact the administrator kind of error message. So that could be you don't have permission to do the thing. Some unexpected input in the form ends up breaking things. And so we're just throwing a generic message. And so Mark has a client that ideally, I think what he would like would be so that he can have access to that message or provide a good message, a message saying, contact Mark or open the support ticket or whatever it is. And we don't. So has anybody ever found a solution to this or wished for a solution to this or any thoughts?
It makes sense. It would be nice because that is kind of frustrating for the end user because they just get that message that says contact the administrator and they have no idea what to do.
I would say I would like access to the message, and it would be nice if the message accepts HTML, but I wouldn't say to give us a button to click. I would say if you gave us the option to just modify the message with HTML, that would give us the ability to create our own button or to do a mail to link or whatever.
That message is in the language files, isn't it? I'm not sure, but I think it is.
My concern is that I think the message might be in a lot of places. But now that I've started to say it out loud, I'm wondering if that is if we have something that helps with that. I don't know that we get it in all circumstances, but let's try again. So this would be a form that would do. Place to look. Text box, we got a button. I don't know how to generate an error, but within the when you have a let's see, when you have a button and this boop, 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 boop. Oh. Every action that we have has this error message.
So that error message is in the I do see it in a resx file. In a language file.
But I'm thinking this one. All right, help me.
So what the reason I'm saying that is that, I mean, you can edit that message, and the solution that you're looking at would be challenging because it's something you got to do. You got to remember to do. But if you edit the actual resx file, then it's consistent because you can't always predict where you're going to see errors. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to cause the errors. But at least it doesn't solve the issue of being able to send to the administrator the exact error, but you could, because I believe that the resx files do accept, actually, yeah, because, so do you want to look at what I'm talking about just to see?
Sure. Actually, give me just a second. I'm going to try to generate an error and see if we get a case where this is really happening. So then maybe you can point me to a better case.
Yeah.
That's the one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is happening in my case, well, who knows why, but if I look at so the thing that I was going to say is create new book. If I had an error message here, I think we would see it. So if I go back to my form and do this, we get that. So one possibility, and I'm not advocating it, I'm just throwing it out there, is that if you created a system level, you could create a token that was that's not right. Error message is something like that, that you put on your actions. Then if they were to fail, you would get the message, but it would be pervasive and difficult and require effort. So, but it would work.
Yeah.
If nothing else, if you're expecting an error in a place or experiencing an error in a place, and it's something that the user can, I mean, we intend for this error message to be used to provide better guidance to your users. So when you have an expected error, it's good to use the error message, and you can get a very custom message that's useful. But I don't think we provide, well, so now back to your point of the default, and perhaps you can tell me do you already know where the key is to?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
under
it's under site settings.
Yep. Settings,
languages, and then choose United States. Yep. And then choose the
translation
that icon. Yep. And then under resource file, local desktop modules, Gene and Sharp action form. And then expand it one more time and choose form. Yeah.
That is
and
very
it's the first one right there.
The question on that one is, will it accept HTML?
So the one below it does. It does have HTML in it. So I think it does based on that.
So let's learn about all that stuff. So
yeah.
Is that at the bottom? Nope, save translation. And so if we go back to our form and get rid of that. And it wouldn't surprise me if I have to clear cache. So I'm just going to save myself the trouble in case that's the case. Resx files exist outside of Plinton app and probably get read once, and so they're probably cached. So we are seeing HTML. We do get a message. So good answer. So the resx file is a good one to define if you want to provide a nice overall message. Unfortunately, I think that file between revisions can get, oh no, I bet there's let's think about this. So site settings, languages, translation, walk the path. So this is local. Oh, and this is there's global host and site. Let's see. So local desktop modules, Gene and Sharp. So we defined it here. But this is the global one. I'll bet the global one gets replaced by us during updates. If we look at the site-specific one, and this is portal 0 resx. So this is the one for the specific site. And so I think this provides the override that would not get over. I mean, provides a file that would get loaded and would never be overwritten by us. Good answer. So that would be the recommended answer for action form. We'll point mark to that.
So did his question also, because I think even the more, okay, so it doesn't say that, but I think the next thing is that would be so incredibly useful. I don't have even a clue. But if you could actually get the context of the of what occurred at that time, but I don't see the answer for that.
Right. So this answers the question. What we just worked through answers the question of how do they know who to call?
Oh, he does say at the bottom, and include the details of the error. It does say that, but yeah, that
So now I'm curious to see if any token. I can't believe the token resolution would happen, but that would be fun if it did. You could. Site settings, translation. See, now this is the one that.
Yep.
0. Yeah, no token. If you had tokens, you could probably get an action ID and a form name and fun things like that. Button name, but that's just wishful thinking. So the feature, let's think about this. The feature, if we were designing it in a perfect world, it would be that the error messages would resolve and I don't know. I almost think that combining the generic message with the error message. If I take responsibility for the error message here, then I would lose any great work we did on the generic one. If we had a generic one that had access to tokens, we could do a good generic message and then come in here with an additional on specific cases and not lose that work. Anything else on the wish list? Mark was hoping for a button, which I suppose, well, yeah, since you can do HTML, you could put something quite involved, but because it doesn't have access to any of the details, that's not very useful. I mean, the button itself doesn't add value.
There was I think that but I recall at some point in the past there was talk of putting on error stacks into every action. Because you know how some of our actions have on error stacks.
There was.
Yeah.
But there again, that would then be pervasive.
Yeah, it would be more work that, when you're setting something up, it wouldn't be anything automatic. Yep.
But yeah, having a global on error stack would let us would let you handle things wherever it happened and decide whether to proceed. And I mean, it's kind of for a different purpose, although you could use it for that. Ugh. All right. Well, at least that's part of an answer that we can give to Mark. So thanks for your help on that. We already did this one.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Okay. So if I have a button that calls a workflow, and I would like that workflow to pick up a different value for each, say, type of button click. I don't think I can respect or use a session variable, because the execution of the action, the workflow in this case, is essentially done by a different user, a system user. So it's kind of partitioned off. Again, I think maybe the same thing is true for a cookie, but what's the kind of recommended best practice way to do that, so that I can have a button, along with a button is some sort of value that gets set based on the button, and it then passes along that button value in the process itself? Does the question make sense?
I think so, but let's do this for a second. So I'm adding another button to our form that just shows all the values that are, that are part of, so we see a lot of them, everything that's in the context.
What was that button, the error message content again?
So
values.
I did a two-step context to JSON array to the value of storing it in tokens, and then the error message was tokens.
Okay.
Gathering the context and outputting the context. And so the button that you click, I think, is present in the context. Nope. Because every button is present in the context. All right, so I was where I was going was, I mean, you want to have the workflow be able to understand what button was clicked or where this is coming from. Have you thought about just adding an input parameter to the workflow and passing it explicitly?
Yes. Okay, so first of all, the answer to that is yes. Then the question kind of still remains. Well, no, I would put it actually in the workflow itself. But I had an existing workflow, and what I was doing testing. I had different scenarios, 1 through 10. And preferred not to alter the workflow itself because that would affect other areas in the software. So I wanted to be able to kind of externalize it in this case, so I didn't have to touch the workflow, touch a bunch of other things that it would affect.
Yep. Well, I would just say, okay,
so
multi-part.
Cookie would not work in this context. Am I correct? For the same reason that a session variable would not work.
So actually, I think session will. I think session and cookie might both work. So,
okay, I'd be very interested to understand that.
all right, so let's try it. So first of all, we want to create a workflow. Let's see, I'm here, so we got a workflow.
Well, you can use you already have a workflow there that you're calling, right? That book.
No, I didn't.
Workflow?
I never called a workflow.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's all right. So we'll do a simple workflow. This is going to be that's pretty specific. We're going to be doing no processing, but on our output, we're going to output value 1 back out. Also, we will be doing let's do session. So this is assuming we're going to set session X, and this is the default of no value. So if we test this thing and pass in something, we get no value as a result because we haven't set X, right? So now we have a workflow that kind of illustrates this. And so if we add another button to our little test here, this is test button session, and we're going to do somebody check me on my syntax, please. Can't ever remember set sessions syntax. E equals value to set. I did remember it. So I'm setting.
You may need to use quotes around that, but give it a shot.
You may. You're right. So let's just get ahead of it, and then we're gonna call our workflow, which is we're going to pass junk, and we're going to get back value 1 and X. And so we're going to have output fields value 1 and X, and we'll do Ajax. And so that'll stop the action. So now we just have to have a field called value 1. and a field called X. So those things will have a place to be when they come back. So we click the button and it works. So junk came back, but the username, which we set in context, so we set session, the X value, but we didn't pass it into the workflow. We passed something totally unrelated. The workflow was able to return back the X variable, which had my name. So session survives and is this accessible within a workflow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But, so can you go back to workflow for me?
Yep.
So your inputs.
I'm just taking in value 1, which means I'm just proving that value 1 is being passed.
Yeah.
Passed through, but the where session X is being returned, it's getting it from the actual session value.
So is that in your process?
There's no process. I mean, I have a start and an end.
You could use the token in your process also, if that's what you're asking.
So yes, let's make something new. So we have create update tokens that we say we create an out value that would be based on so now we're getting out value. And instead of outputting the session directly, we can send back out value. So if we test this thing, we're getting back my cookie value, my session value X now exists. So but we're able to manipulate it within the. So session is carried forward into your workflow.
Well, thank you.
Sure. We could do a similar test with cookie. I'm not sure that cookie would be carried into your workflow because cookie is very browser accessible. But I mean, it's probably worth the test. But sure, let's find out. So of course this is going to return nothing. And actually this should be, let's be clear. So let's go back to our form. And in addition to doing this, we'll do set cookie X equal yeah, we're not passing that. So we're using our same test button. Interesting. I thought I must not have saved that, but the date.
You didn't save your workflow, if I'm not mistaken.
That X is here.
Yes, there it is.
I'm
So
trying.
the cookie is part of the
Ah.
context as well. So
Ah.
it is available.
Okay.
Harumph, harumph.
So the last thing that I wanted to add is that you made mention that you didn't want to pass it explicitly through your inputs. And I would just suggest that so long as you give, even with a working workflow, if you add an input parameter that's not required, you shouldn't be breaking things that exist. They will continue to run. They just won't have any value for that. In the same way, you can add an output that doesn't exist and it won't break the workflow. It won't break it either way, right? If you remove or add, I mean, if you change an input name or remove an input, that will impact your existing processes. But if you just add an input, it's a new input that won't break things that are already there, unless you somehow require or rely on it. So if you just want to know where your button came from and you're explicitly passing a button, it won't break things.
Well, thank you very much.
That was a great question, and we should. I love it when things just work. Thanks for spending your hour with us. We'll do it again next week. But if you have a minute, hang around for Afterglow, and we'll just hang out and talk for a little bit more.